Hello. So in scientific research they say there's no such thing as bad data or a bad test. For this run I'm going to lean really heavily into that. So for this flight I was testing the Meteor 85 in its pure stock configuration. Basically I wanted to see what it could do straight out of the bag with very little done to it. This is an older Meteor 85 and it has the Beta85 M03 VTX, which has a maximum output of 400 milliwatts. Now when I set it to 400 milliwatts I get this interference, where if I set it to only 200 milliwatts I don't get the interference. So I think the flight controller is probably struggling to provide enough amps for the VTX, and yeah, there's just noise being induced there. But I decided to set it to 400 milliwatts anyway, just to see what would happen. So for this flight I'm heading for the wind turbines that are in the distance there. They're about 1.5, 1.6 kilometers, and I'm using my standard 2S high voltage LiPo, 530 milliamp hours, and that's a GMB. It's one of those yellow LiPos. And again, because I just wanted to see straight out of the bag how far can I get this quad to go. And I know there's things that I can do to these quads to make them more efficient, to make them go further, but I kind of like the absurdity of sending stock tiny whoops long range, something that's only supposed to be 100 meter distance from you, sending them a kilometer and seeing what can happen. So that's what I'm doing here. Now if you look at the timer in the top left, I've got to these wind turbines in quite a short period of time. I've got there quite quickly, only 2 minutes to kind of get a kilometer and a half, and that's because I have a light tailwind to see the direction and the speed of the wind turbines. One of the things that makes tiny whoops really bad for flying long range is the ducts. They create drag, and in the wind they effectively act as sails. And that's what happens here. As I turn around, my speed plummets and I basically don't go anywhere. I have to really kind of pitch forward to get the quad to start to return. And in doing so, that creates the problem with the battery. Because unlike a 1S tiny whip battery, which we just rag them till they fall out of the sky at kind of 3 volts, or a lithium ion pack which we can drop to around 3 volts or so with a high voltage LiPo, that's not really a good idea. And I'm already very close to approaching the point where I should be putting the quad on the ground, and yet I'm still over a kilometer away. So at this point in the flight I know that getting it back to me is going to be troublesome, to say the least. But therein brings around kind of test number 2, the inadvertent test, because I have thought about using this quad with a 1S lithium ion pack. I've actually made up an 18650 and a 21700 pack, 3000 and 4000 milliamp hours respectively. And the thing is with those batteries are they're heavier, which will mean more amp draw to kind of lift the extra weight, which means more sag. And because the packs with lithium ions, they can't really take much sag, it means the voltage will drop quite quickly, even though they have high density energy within their large capacity. So what I need to know with these quads, especially this one, is how does it fly and handle on voltages in and around 3 volts, and this is what we're going to find out, because there's no point in having 3000 or 4000 milliamp hours and as soon as I take off the battery sags from 4.2 volts to kind of 3.2, 3.3, I head out somewhere, I turn around, the voltage then sags to 3 volts, and before you know it the quad's starting to sag and droop and land on the ground. So this is what test number 2 basically is. what happens when the voltage really sags on this LiPo. I have done some hover test in the back garden with this quad on an 18650, and it hovers quite well. You can fly it around for a few minutes before the voltage sags, but that's okay when it's in the back garden. What happens if it's 1.5 kilometers, or in theory 3-4 kilometers away? And basically what happens is you run out of juice, you run out of RPM, and the quad starts to sink. And at this point it doesn't really matter whether I increase the throttle or not, we're going down. But thankfully I've managed to nurse it back to a field which is only about 75-100 meters from where I'm standing. So this particular test I'm going to call a half success. The VTX, even though it has interference, does get me some range. A LiPo I know will get me 1.5 kilometers, and I probably would have got back safely if there hadn't been a breeze. But what I've also discovered is that the quad's not going to stay in the air if there is sag beyond 3 volts. And what that means is I can't use this quad with an 18650 cell.